Hey guys, it's Jay, and we have now made it through 5 weeks of the Call of Duty World League, and with 2 games a week, that means we have 10 games worth of data on these teams, and we have our first major LAN event coming up in UMG, South Carolina, so I thought this would be a perfect time to come out with my first ever Call of Duty World League North American Power Rankings. Coming in at number 12 is H2K. And H2K does not have the worst record in the league, but they are the worst team in the league. They started out 3-0, which means that they showed a lot of promise early on, and they have since then lost 7 games in a row, which is the longest losing streak in the World League. But not only that, they're not even competitive. They are at 35% individual map wins. They're not even taking teams to games 4 and 5 very often. They're just getting absolutely destroyed, and it is a very, very hard thing to watch. And at number 11 is CLG, or Counter Logic Gaming, and CLG actually is the worst team in the league statistically. They're 2-8 overall, but I would like to make note that they have made a roster change recently, adding Perplex to the roster, and since making that change, they are 1-1, and that one loss is against Team Envious, which is one of the best teams in the league, so things might actually be looking up for CLG. I don't know if they're looking up enough for them to be competitive and actually make some waves, but at least they shouldn't be at the bottom of the standings for very long. And at number 10 is Dream Team, and Dream Team is a very, very confusing team. They handed Optic its first loss of the season. Optic Gaming at the beginning of the season was 7-0. They looked like one of the 2 major juggernauts, the favorite to win the championship, and Dream Team came in and beat them. But they're not the only team that has had trouble with Dream Team. Dream Team has taken more teams to a Game 5 than any other team in the league. They actually have the second highest map count. They've played 44 individual maps, which means they're averaging between 4 and 5 maps per game. And considering they're 2-8, they simply lack the ability to close it out. And so if they can get that figured out, Dream Team could actually become a pretty scary team. I don't think that they're a team that could actually make their way up into the higher ranks, but they could certainly play spoiler to a lot of teams, as Optic found out earlier this year. And coming in at number 9 is Team Caliber, and Team Caliber is a very strange team. Also, it's one of these lower-ranked, bottom-of-the-barrel kind of teams that is in danger of not even being in the league next year, but somehow has managed to beat not 1, but 2 of the top 5 teams in the league. They have beat Complexity, and they were the first team in the league to beat FaZe. And the more time goes by, the more matches we see, honestly, the more we find out that losing to Team Caliber is a really bad sign for these higher ranked teams that seem to overlook the lower level guys. But Caliber, I don't think, is gonna really go anywhere. They're not very good. They don't take teams into long series very often, but they will take you out. I mean, they actually beat FaZe 3-0, so you can't sleep on them, but you shouldn't lose to them either. At number 8, I have Luminosity, and honestly, I have nothing exciting to say for them. I mean, there's just nothing really spectacular about them. They're just a decent team that doesn't really have that statement statistic or win or anything like that to really fall on. Number 7 is TSM, and if you don't know who TSM is, that's because in 5 weeks, they have gone through 3 organization changes. They started out as Question Mark, then they became Rush Esports, and then I believe just 1 week later, they became Team Solo Mid. So, you know, they're right in the middle of the pack. Maybe Team Solo Mid will play a little better than Team Question Mark did, and they might be able to upset a few people late in the season, but I'm not expecting a whole lot from them. Number 6 is Elevate, and Elevate is, in my opinion, the most fun team to watch. Elevate is the kind of team that makes things different and unique. For example, I believe in both games this week, every single ban or protect stage involved the other team banning the MR6. I don't know if I've ever seen the MR6 banned for anyone other than Elevate, but because of what Nagafin is able to do with it, you have to ban it. They're a very high-risk, high-reward team. They're the kind of team that plays very fast. They played a game of Capture the Flag this week, in fact, where there was 2 scores in the first minute of play, which is unheard of. The problem is that they rushed the enemy flag so fast, and they got their flag cap so fast that they were all out of position, and the other team was able to just mosey on into their base, grab their flag, and return it with no real problem because there was no defense set up. And that's the problem. Sometimes they'll beat you 10-3 in uplink, and other times they'll just get slaughtered in uplink because they push so far towards the enemy base. Like I said, they're just very high risk, high reward, but they're always entertaining. And this brings me to the number 5 team, which is FaZe. And FaZe I want to talk about a little bit. I honestly would like to drop FaZe even more in these power rankings, but I just can't justify doing it. FaZe last week was the big story in the CWL because of their game against Complexity. And in it, they went to a Game 5 search and destroy, and they actually won the game. But it was determined later that Clayster cheated during the game. He used a glitched spot that wasn't supposed to be a part of the game, where he jumped up into a tree that you're not supposed to be able to get up into. It gave him an unfair line of sight, and he was able to take out 2 people who were trying to defuse the bomb. And Treyarch decided that that was cheating, and they ultimately forced a forfeit of that round, which gave Complexity the win. And so when my personal feelings about that aside, I personally disagree with it. I think they should have replayed the map and gotten a fair winner instead of just forcing a forfeit. I think that the league was kind of making an example out of FaZe, and I don't like that happening. But when I looked at the schedule this week and I saw who FaZe was playing, I said, it's a really bad week to be either one of those 2 teams. Because you are not only facing one of, if not the most talented roster in the league, and I'm not a FaZe fan, that's just a statement of fact, but you're facing one of the most talented rosters in a league in a week where they have a massive chip on their shoulder, where they're coming in angry, and they're coming in to prove a point, and they're coming in more prepared than they've ever been in their lives. And I was expecting, and one of the teams they were facing was Optic, and I honestly expected FaZe to go 3-0 against both teams, just 6-0 on the week, dominant performances, just show everybody who's boss because of how much they got shafted from the week before. And FaZe came in and looked absolutely dead. I was very disappointed in FaZe this week. They lost both games and frankly weren't even that competitive in either one of them. The first game was against TSM, and they lost 3-2. They should have won that game. FaZe wins that game 99 out of 100 times. The second game was against Optic, and they lost 3-1. They came in looking flat. They were the exact opposite of what I thought they were going to be, and it makes me very strongly question the character of this team. Is this a team that is actually good and has their head in the game, or is this a team that is only good when things are going their way, and as soon as they face any kind of adversity, they just kind of quit? And that's what I saw this weekend. And you know, I'm not saying that this is the collapse of FaZe, but I'm certainly saying that I don't think FaZe is up there with the other teams at the top of the ladder, simply because I don't know how well they can play from behind, because here they are in a situation where they're coming off massive adversity, and they looked completely dead in the water. And number 4 is Rise, and I don't have a whole lot of nice things to say about Rise. Rise is a team that is just taking care of business against lesser teams. They don't have a single win against a top 5 team in this league. Their highest ranked win is Elevate, who is at 6 right now. But at the same time, you can't deny that they're a good team. They have a top of the league record. They have taken care of business against all the teams they're supposed to. I guess I'm just waiting for them to make some kind of a headline to really excite people. At number 3 is Complexity, and this one I want to put a little asterisk next to because, like I said, they kind of stole a win last week where they didn't really earn the victory. I think if they replay that map instead of forcing a forfeit, then FaZe wins. And these power rankings are a different story, but as of right now, I've got to give it to Complexity. And another thing I want to say about Complexity is they really know how to close things out. They have the highest map count in the league, where they've played 45 maps. But unlike Dream Team, who has played 44 maps, Complexity has actually been winning Game 5, and they have a record that shows it. In my opinion, they're a top 3 team, and they look really good. They're a team that kind of came out of nowhere. I don't want to say that they came out of nowhere because obviously they're a known team, but to my knowledge, Complexity was not expected to be up there with FaZe, Rise, Optic, and everybody else. But I feel like they're overachieving right now, and I don't feel like they're going to stop. I think that maybe they've been underestimated, and they're currently achieving at the proper level. At number 2, I have Optic, and coming into the season, I thought Optic was the top team, and I thought Scump was the top player, and I haven't really seen anything to change my mind on that. But at the same time, Optic is they confuse you. Like, they'll beat Envy, and they'll beat FaZe, and they'll beat Rise, and they'll beat all these really, really talented, good top teams, but then they'll lose to Dream Team. And it just makes you wonder, like, you know, I've heard stories of how they don't practice very often. You know, when it comes to really preparing for the events, they kind of just slack off a little bit and kind of rely on their just natural talent to carry them through, and that has been plenty. And they're an extremely talented team, but I think that if they plan on winning this league, which I think that they do, and I think that it's a very legitimate chance that they do, they're going to have to actually step up their effort a little bit. You can't lose to a team like Dream Team and expect to consistently beat the really good teams, which is what you have to do in order to win this league. And number 1 is Envious. And when I was looking at the stats, I was not expecting Envious to be my top-rated team. But there's a couple things about Envious that really surprised me. For example, they not only have a league high record with 8-2, they also win 73% of their maps, which is the highest winning percentage in the game. They aren't just beating teams, they're absolutely destroying teams, and they're on the longest winning streak in the game right now. They've won 5 in a row. They don't look like they're slowing down, and in my opinion, it's not really that debatable that they are, in fact, the best team in the league. They're not the most popular team. They don't have the biggest following. But if you aren't paying attention to Envious, you need to be paying attention to Envious. So thanks for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, we have a big LAN tournament coming up this weekend. I believe the pros start playing Saturday evening and into Sunday. And be sure to check that out. Should be a good time. And goodbye.